Okay, so in this video we're going to talk all about workflows, and we're going to cover off multiple elements here. We're going to talk about what are workflows, when do you need to use them, what are the components that make up a workflow, and finally how to edit and build your own workflows. Okay, so let's just cover off right at the start what actually are workflows. So in all honesty, it's a bit of a fancy phrase for what is actually a process. So workflows contain the individual steps in a process that you have in your business. So say for instance, let's take it a business lead coming in. What are the individual steps and the tasks that your business goes through from having that initial lead being received through to converting it into an order and a sale? That in essence is exactly what a workflow is. And we're going to cover off a lot more detail in this video about how that all works in Lucro. Okay, secondly, when do you actually need to use workflows with Lucro? Well, the only time you need to worry about workflows are if you plan to use either the leads and or the orders sections of Lucro. So if you don't planning on using leads or orders inside Lucro, then you don't need to worry about workflows. Okay, so let's now get started. So how do we access workflows? So from the dashboard or anywhere on the system, we go to the main menu item system settings here. We click that menu to expand it, and then we click on the workflows menu item. That then brings us into this summary page, which shows all of the workflows which currently exist in your portal. You'll see that by default, there are two existing example workflows in your system. Let's take a quick look at those now. So if you don't planning on using leads or orders inside Lucro, then you don't need to worry about workflows. Okay, so let's take a look now on this summary page, the different headings for the items which exist on this page. So we have firstly the name of the workflow. Then we have the type of workflow. There are only two options, two different types of workflow. One is either order and one is lead. The service which the workflow is being used for or applied to. By default, the system applies all services. The date the workflow was added. The number of tasks which are contained inside the workflow. And finally, the number of assigned leads or orders which are actually using this workflow. Okay, let's now take a look at this lead example workflow to actually show you how this all comes together. So clicking the actions button here now, we can see we have four different options. Let's take a look firstly at the edit option. So as we're clicking on edit, we can rename the workflow by taking away any of the characters or totally renaming it. Secondly, we have the service which is being applied for this workflow. So by default in the example workflows, the all services are being applied. However, any other services which you added into the system yourself to personalize it will appear in this list, and you can simply select them by clicking on that button there. Additionally, we can change whether or not the workflows being used is default for this service or not by toggling on or off that button here. And then finally, we have the options for this workflow to either apply to a lead or an order. It can only apply to one. A workflow can't apply to both a lead and an order. Okay, we just cancel all of those changes now. We go back to the summary view. Secondly, we could delete the workflow if we wish. We don't recommend you do so because these two examples have been given to you in your default portal to show you how workflows work, but you can wish to delete them if you do so by confirming there, but let's cancel out in this instance. Okay, we're going to take a look at tasks in a second, but before we do so, you have the simple ability to copy a workflow, which is a very useful feature to rather than starting a workflow from scratch. So what we recommend doing is taking, for example, this lead workflow here. We click the copy feature, and then if we just rename it by calling it, say, example 2, and then you can again select the service which you wish this workflow to apply to, or leave it as all services by default, and then click the submit button. We now get the success message, and then here we go, we've now got this new example workflow being created at the date and time and the same number of 7 tasks which exist there. Okay, let's now take a look at the actual tasks which make up finally the workflow itself. As we click the task button now, we're taken down a level to actually see a summary view of all of the tasks which make up the workflow. So this is a very powerful view because it basically tells us everything that's going on inside this workflow, all of the items that making up, and who is being notified and responsible for the actual tasks. So let's now take a look individually at all of these different components we see here on this summary view. So let's start with the order number. Okay, so the order number. As the name suggests, this column here determines the order in which the tasks should be completed through the workflow. So as we can see here, they're listed in ascending order, and we can see that there are a total of 7 tasks that make up this particular example workflow. So the task 1 is the beginning of the workflow, and the workflow is only completed once task 7 has been marked as completed as well. Just to point out, a workflow must have a minimum of 1 task, and there are no maximum limits on the number of tasks in a workflow, but we advise best practice you wouldn't normally have more than 20 tasks in a workflow, as it can get too excessive. Okay, column 2, the task name. So this is the textual value of what the actual task is all about. So as you can see here, we've provided in this example intuitive names to make it clear to the person what the task is all about. As you can see, don't use too many words. We don't recommend more than 5 or 6 words in your task name. It needs to be short and sweet, but the key thing is the task name is intuitive. Okay, let's now look at the next 3 columns, which are very important. You can see here the last 3 columns all begin with either UT or UTS. So this stands for either user type or user types. So there's a lot of information in the support center around user types. Please have a read of that if you haven't already done so. But in summary, user types are a group of users in the system which are defined by a set of permissions. The 3 core user types we have are super admin, admin, and general. The reason we use user types in workflows is to enable us to define a generic workflow, which can be assigned to any users with the same user type in the system. So as we can see here, as this is a lead example workflow, it's very common for the user type general to be responsible as a salesperson level user in the company, to be responsible for completing all of the tasks in a lead-based workflow. Had we not assigned a user type to the workflow, it would mean we would have to build a workflow for each individual person in the business, which is not practical. So that's why we therefore define user types generically as a workflow, but then when a lead comes into the business, that lead individually is assigned to an individual user inside the system. Okay, so as we can see here, every task in this particular workflow is assigned to user type general. So general user in the business will be responsible for completing every single one of these individual tasks. That doesn't have to be the case. You could have any individual user type assigned to any task in the system. You could have one task assigned to general, another task assigned to super admin or admin, etc., etc. It doesn't matter. It's just in this particular example, UT of general is assigned all of the tasks in this example workflow. The next column, the user types to be notified. Okay, so this value here determines which user types, if any, we wish to notify about a certain task. Okay, so you'll see straight away, whereas the column on the left, the assigned column, it must have a value because every single task must be assigned to a certain user type. it's optional. You don't have to notify user types of a certain task. So you can see here that only certain tasks, only certain items are notified. Okay, so what does this actually mean? There are two types of notification we have in the system. We can send email notifications, and we have all the standard templates inside the system which you can bespoke yourself. And also, if you have SMS working set up, you can also send text messages to certain user types if you wish as well. So why would you send notifications? Well, perfect example here being that when a lead is received, you can use the automation of Lucro to automatically send a standard template to a customer to say, thank you for your inquiry. Here's the contact details of the salesperson who will be contacting you shortly. Equally, in this instance here, we're notifying user type general that they've been assigned a new lead, and it's for them to now start contacting this customer and processing that lead. So that is why it's optional if you wish to notify user types of certain tasks as we work through. Okay, we're going to take a look at that in more detail in this example in a moment, but that's what the UT's notify column is all about. Let's now look at the UT's viewed column, the last column here. It tells us basically what user types can actually view the actual task inside their Lucro panel. So this is a great little feature that enables you to configure your workflows so that whilst you have a definitive set of tasks in the workflow, you may not necessarily want all user types to be able to view all of the tasks. So you can personalize that view here under the user types viewed. So say, for example, we were to add an 8th task to this particular workflow. It may be commissions. So it may be supply commissions that you're receiving. Now the super admin and the admin would wish to see that, but you probably wouldn't want necessarily the general user type viewing that information. So that's how we can personalize the user types viewed, that in that instance, the general would see all of the 7 tasks, but they wouldn't see the 8th task there unless the user type general is added to the view of that task. So we've now covered all of the individual items that make up the workflow tasks that we can see here from this summary view. So let's now go and actually add an additional task to an existing workflow. So as we've seen already, that there are 7 tasks in this workflow. So let's go in and add an 8th task now. Okay, so there are 2 ways to do this. Now the easy method, and the one we recommend you use all of the time as much as possible because it's so much quicker and easier, is to simply take the last task in a workflow and then add to it by using the Actions Copy button. Okay, so this is by far the recommended way to build up your workflow tasks, by copying as many tasks as you want. So as we select that copy button now, the system will automatically add the word copy to the existing task name that you're copying. Okay, but we don't want to use that. We want to give this example task 8 because there are already 7 tasks in the system. So this is going to create task 8. So we change the name to whatever we want. We hit the submit button. We then get the confirmation, and there you go, task 8, the name we've just given it, with the identical permissions from what task 7 was. Now this is so much quicker and easier because even if you don't want the identical settings, at least what the system has done is given you values for each of these items. And it's very easy for you to then go in and edit these values to change them, to personalize them exactly how you wish to do. We're going to show you how to do that in a minute. But before we do so, we're going to show you the other more long-winded method of adding a task, which is using the Add Tasks button. So using the Add Task button is a much more long-winded way of adding a task, reason being that you have to define values for all of these items here that we've seen in the summary view. We'll go through and do that in a second, but we reiterate it's much easier and quicker to take an example, an existing task already, and simply copy it. But let's go and add a task now using the Add Task button. So as you come in, if you read this information here, it explains exactly what you need to do here. But ultimately what we're doing here is adding values for every single one of those items that we saw on the summary view. So let's create an example task here now. Say it's request supply commissions. Okay, so this is going to be my last task in the workflow, and therefore, as I have 8 tasks already, this is going to be task order 9. Okay, so who's going to be assigned the task? Well, because it's something around commissions, I'm going to ask my admin will be responsible for actually processing this task. Who do I want to be notified about the task? I want the admin to be notified. So what happens then when this task comes through to a workflow, the admin will automatically be sent a system notification to say, hey, you've got a new task now, you need to process this. Okay, so I'm only going to notify admin. Okay, who can view the task? The only person or user type I wish to be able to see this task is admin. Okay, by default anyway, super admin sees all of the tasks, so I don't need to define super admin, but admin is the only user type I wish to be able to see this task. Okay, now here I have the ability to select custom templates. Now, because the only user type in this instance is internal, I don't need to define a custom template because there's a standard template which basically sends to the user type here about who's being notified. It's a standard template which you'll see in the email template system. So I don't need to therefore select any custom templates because they are for normally when you're notifying user type customer, which doesn't supply in this instance. Okay. I'm not going to send an SMS template either because it's an internal user, so I don't need to send SMSs internally. So just to recap, we've given the task a name, we've given it the latest order number of 9, so it's going to be the 9th and final task in this workflow. We've assigned it to admin. Okay, admin will be notified about the task, and admin are the only user type that can view the task. We don't need to select any custom templates or SMS in this instance, and that's it. We now have all of the options, all of the items in the workflow, and we just simply click submit, and the task has been added, and there we go. The 9th task now appears, and we have the values of admin, admin, admin. That is how we add a task manually using the Add Task button. So we've seen the 2 different options now of how to add a task, both the simple and quick option and the longer winded option. Let's now look at how easy it is to actually edit a task. So to edit an existing task. So let's take a look at our task 8 again here, or example task 8. We can see the permissions currently exist as per this, but say we want to take off general from being able to view this task. So the easy way we do this is just click on Actions, Edit. This gives us the same view as we went through when adding a task using the button. Okay, and all we do here is if we unselect General and keep that to Admin only, click Update, there you go, General has now disappeared. So that's how easy it was to change the permissions on any individual task. So let's change it again. Rather than this task being assigned to General, let's assign it to Admin. So click on Actions, Edit, change it in here from General to Admin, scroll down, click Update, and there you go, that's changed it. So now you can see why we recommend copying existing tasks and going to edit them rather than creating a task from scratch using the Add Task, because it's just so much quicker and easier. So that is how to edit tasks in a workflow. Finally, as we've now covered all of the items which make up tasks and how to create new tasks and edit tasks and delete tasks, let's now go back to our original workflows summary page by clicking the workflows button from here. And this is where we can see all of our workflows. And let's just show you how quick and simple it is now, like we showed earlier, to basically create your own workflow again. So we recommend you copy an existing workflow. So let's look at example 2. I'm just going to copy this now. Okay, and it's going to create copy for me. Okay, I can select what service I want. So say for instance on this one, I want it to be service 1 or any service name that you've added into the system. Okay, so I select that. the workflow has been copied successfully. I can now go in and let's rename this to say okay, just a simple thing. And I also want to make this my default workflow for leads. Okay, so mark its default for leads. It will then become bold, which denotes it is the default workflow for leads. Okay, now knowing what we know, if we go to look at our tasks, you can see all of the tasks that we've got here. Say I don't want it as 7 tasks, I only want it as say 5. So I go through, delete all the tasks I don't want. Okay, so I've now got my 5 tasks. So like we said at the start, always keep lead received for leads as your default task number 1, because that way the automation of Lucro will send emails out and automatically mark everything as automatically timestamped, etc. Let's say task 2, I don't want initial customer call. Maybe I'm going to rename that internal discussion. Okay, so it's still task 2 because it's the second task. Okay, maybe I don't want general to do this. Maybe I'm going to assign it to admin. Okay, and maybe who can view this task? Who's going to be notified this task? Maybe I'm going to notify both admin and general now. Okay, as well as maybe the super admin. So let's notify all 3. Okay, so that we can select all 3 values there. Okay, and then click submit. It's been updated. So there you go. So you can see how quick and easy it is by using an existing workflow to personalize things exactly as you want. We highly recommend you don't build a workflow from scratch. That's why we've given you the example demo workflows to work through, to personalize, copy tasks from there, rename the task names, change the permissions to match your exactly how your business wishes to run. That's the power of workflows. And hopefully in this video you've seen all of these steps now that go to make up a workflow, and it all makes sense now, the different pieces of that make up the workflow and how they all come together. If you have any questions or require any support, please don't hesitate to reach out clicking on the Lucro support button here, and we'll gladly assist you with any issues you may come across with workflows or any questions you might have. Thank you for listening and watching this video.